Hello, hello, hello. Um, I need to. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, folks. Let's see what we can do. Uh, okay. God help me. Oh, this is horrible. This is truly not right. Hmm, 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 hmm. Okay. Uh, I hate doing this myself. Welcome to the Foolish Tech Show. This is Thursday's show, 4 p.m. Sorry, way late, 4:30 almost. We're here to support our software. Go to foolishtechshow.com or foolishit.com/live and join us in our RC chat. I'm going to talk about whatever today because apparently I am the only one here. Let's see if maybe I can see listen to myself talk in these. Let's see the stream here. See if maybe I can see listen to myself. Yeah, okay, so that's keeping up with me. Let's see if. All right. Okay, so we're broadcasting, no drop frames. What do you guys want to talk about? Innsmouth? All right, I'll try to keep up. I've got a whole bunch of weirdness going on here. With multiple windows and trying to keep all this balanced. You know how bad I am, folks, so my apologies. Had a long phone call before the scheduled showtime, and that, I guess, distracted me. And why are there so many foolish Michaels and Mikeys in the chat? Two of them are me, but why is there that third one? It's kind of weird. Um, Maybe I'm on my laptop. Ocracoke. I don't know what's in Ocracoke, yeah, Innsmouth sounds like a whole lot more fun. They should go to Innsmouth, not Ocracoke. Um, but yeah, they're in the wrong side of or the lower side of the states. Not in New England. Yes, cloning. Yep. Thanks, guys. Agree. It's cloning. All right, so let me try to talk about something. You guys can chit chat. I'll try to keep tabs on what you guys are saying from time to time, but I don't multitask well, so bear with me. And oh no, see, and I'll do things like that and make it all not look right. Okay, so that looks reasonably good there. There can only be one, maybe, possibly two. All right, so let's get into some news. Um, where are all the good stories I was reading earlier? Fudge. Oh, yeah, Avast acquired AVG for $1.3 billion. What do you guys think about that? Gula, wait, there's multiple. Yeah, yeah. Gola Michaels. I think it's Ghola. Gol. But we can continue the Doom talk. Thanks, Phoenix, for talking about the first look of the 1060. I've been following this closely, and I wanted to spend a good several minutes discussing this and everything that I've come across. I'll try to provide some links, but I've been doing this research for now several weeks, and I don't even remember half the stuff I came across in for the actual links. But I will provide as many as I can to provide justification for the points that I'm making. Um, so basically, the 1060, as you know, based upon the naming conventions that both NVIDIA and AMD largely follow, it's the second number that kind of determines the caliber of card, whether it be a low-end mainstream or a enthusiast high-end gamer card. Now, so basically, like an 8 or a 9 would indicate the higher end card. The 6 would indicate, the 5 or 6 would indicate some sort of mid-range card, or 6, and anything lower would typically be a low-range card. And so that accounts for the 6 and the 1060, and in comparison, the 1070 and 1080 are both largely higher end cards. Now, interestingly enough, AMD launched a 480 card. Now, typically their 80s and 90s in the AMD camp are their high-end cards, but unfortunately in this particular circumstance, what they released with the 480, um, when they released the 480, it was not a high-end part. It does not compete with the 1070 or 1080. In fact, it looks more like the 970 from previous generation. And in fact, their price performance, or their performance per watt, and their and other key figures are largely comparable to NVIDIA's last generation. Now, that's an issue. If they can undercut Nvidia at a particular price point significantly, that might be okay. But I'm a little bit concerned about that. Has anybody else out there read any on this? I'm going to get you guys some links now, but if you guys have any links on this, or excuse me, if you guys have any opinions on this, I would love to know. But basically, what it's boiling down to is should have been a great launch for AMD to remain relevant. It was barely a good launch. It was a good launch, I'd say, overall, the grand scheme of things. But Nvidia is in a point where, because they were able to make such a small card with the 1060 and such an inexpensive card to produce, and it has more performance than the 480 apparently. Um, AMD may well file bankruptcy. I see huge problems looming for them. It may even usurp their stranglehold on the console market, I would hazard, because the only thing keeping them viable is the low cost. And they're not able to hit the performance per watt target that AMD currently has in its current generation, and the price difference is marginal. You're talking about the 1060 being a $250 part, and the 1080 being a $230 or $200 part, depending upon the 4 or 8 gig memory configurations. Your you know your the performance, it's the price, the $50 difference there is something AMD is, or Nvidia has always had a premium. They don't, I mean, they could take over the market if they just dropped another $10 or $20 off that price, because there's no reason that anybody would ever pick the AMD choice. I'm so upset with them at this point. I love the underdog, and competition's good for everyone involved. And I'm gonna hate the market when AMD exits it. And Intel is not proven to be any sort of competitor to the discrete graphics card market, so there's no competitors to Nvidia at this point. Certainly in the high-end segment, and not apparently in the mid-range segment. The only place AMD can currently compete is in the low-end segment. It's very sad, and even then, it's not maybe even the best um, solution. Um, I don't play a lot of video games, so I'm not in the cards so much for the gaming performance. I do a lot of high performance computing stuff and things like that with the video cards. I do play games though occasionally, and I want that experience. I want to be able to enjoy a modern game. Um, but I also don't want to spend a lot. Typically in the past I've gone with a price point of around $200 for a card. And so this is incredibly near and dear to my heart. This launches because it brings a whole new level of performance. Basically, the previous generation's high level of performance, the higher end performance, down to the $200 price point. And that's great. And AMD is not dead. They do have their designs certainly aren't, and they've sold their designs to China, by the way. So I hope to see the Chinese bring some advancements to some of their architecture, to some of their previous designs. I don't want to completely dismiss them, but it just doesn't look good based upon this recent product launch. And let me get you those links that I was discussing. So to give you an idea of just a review of the 480, there's a 480 review. Let's see. Let's see. This was AMD's response to the issues about too much power usage for the 480. To give you guys an idea, this is a here's another article about the power consumption. I don't know if that's the one I wanted. This is where they apparently came out with their software fix for that issue. But anyway, I wanted to bring you guys up to speed. That should be enough links. There's more, but yeah, that's basically where it stands right now. So I don't know. There's some talk that a lot of the issues that I have with the launch of the 480 can be resolved with third-party cards. The cooling solutions, the power delivery solutions, and the overclocking by extension can all be improved for that part. But really, the only thing was their price point, and Nvidia's pretty much just shattered that with the announcement of the 1060's price. And if their performance is anything like what the article previously posted, where was that article? Phoenix posted, I think. It's going to be impossible, I think, for AMD to compete. And you know, and if they sell what are they going to sell cards for a loss? Who knows? Yeah, I don't know about a buyout. I really don't know what advantage AMD would bring to Intel if they were to purchase them. There's nothing that Intel needs from them at all, except maybe their contracts with the console manufacturers. In other words, both Microsoft and Sony are on board with AMD right now for both their current generation as well as their VR and second generation release of their current consoles. Beyond that, it's far murkier to know. But you're talking about for the next several years them continuing the reign there until they make a change. So I don't know, Phoenix, but generally I agree with you. I think you're looking at it a little bit one-sided, and I like to be as objective as possible when it comes to these things. Is my broadcasting still working? Let's see, dropped 0, dropped 0. Okay. Can't get past this first article and this link. Why is that not working? Oh, is it probably because of my privacy badger. Let's see if that works. Yeah, I'm sorry, my yeah, that's not working. Don't know why. Let's see. Do we have another slide here? Oh, maybe because that page is broken. I can't see any of those slides on that 1060 page. Hopefully there'll be another one. I'd like to look at the performance numbers, but I think they're going to be about maybe as much as 5% above the 480. Okay. What else? Yeah, so did I post that article yet? I don't know if I did. I talked about it, but the Avast acquires AVG. Oh, and I'm big with the single board computers, and this will probably qualify as both our SBC as well as Pi, Pi News, Pi, Odroid, C2, Banana, any of those. UFS looks like it might be the replacement for yet another PC World link. Might be another replacement for the micro SD card standard. Very much higher speeds, rivaling and exceeding previous eMMC offerings. And the advantage of this, hopefully, is being that it won't be a non-interchangeable module like eMMC typically was. This would be a card that you could put into a common slot. So universal flash storage, and it looks like the potential performance increases are huge, and that should improve the market for all those single board computers that depend upon cards like that for their primary storage. That's kind of cool. What else is going on? Be careful if you have a smartwatch. It does appear as if there are vulnerabilities that could allow somebody, if they compromise your smartwatch and you access an ATM while you're wearing it, they could use the sensors in the watch to potentially determine what your PIN is. That's a big concern for our security conscious folks out there. And I want to thank all of you for joining me today when it's just me. Thank you to the entire Futures crew as always. Appreciate you guys participating. Phoenix, it goes without a mention again that your contributions are always welcome. Shuk, if you're listening or tuning in, I'm not sure. And DG Murdoch, same goes for you, as well as our anonymous fool 4247. Thanks again so much for joining us. And I hope it benefits you in some way. And if you have any questions about our software services, please don't be afraid to interrupt me. Scream from the rooftops. In fact, I would very much appreciate that if you did. Let's see. What else is going on? Today. Sorry, I didn't have a whole lot. I didn't prepare too well for this show. I think we talked about this a bit yesterday, but it's worth mentioning again. This giant processor that this guy built, so cool. He's obviously doesn't have much of a life outside doing things like this, probably. But I don't know. I'm guessing that's a low blow for someone I really don't know anything about. But I admire what he accomplished, particularly anything that's in the vein of education, and certainly his contribution was. And I know we've talked about it, but I just wanted to mention it again in case anyone missed it yesterday. What else? Got nothing. This is a high-end enterprise offering, but it's interesting to see some of the scaling, higher-end scaling of NVMe. I hope to ultimately replace my current SATA-based AHCI-based SSDs with NVMe ones as soon as I can. And they should bring a huge performance boost. And it's interesting to look at the enterprise offerings in that area. Now that these cost between like $1 and $3, I think, per gigabyte, which is going to be prohibitive for most consumers, but it'll these will definitely get down to the sub-dollar per gigabyte mark, and that will obviously be welcomed by all of us. Disconnecting all the peripherals and got straight down to the motherboard and no video. What could this be? Okay, so Ian, thank you for bringing up a topic. Yeah, thank you for bringing up the topic. I'll cover Phoenix, your questions, and what you wrote there in just a moment. My apologies. I'll look away for 1 second and I get a ton of questions. But that's great. Thank you for contributing. And what I would say is, if you're not getting any video, first of all, is this integrated or discrete? Uh, uh, Graphics cards. Is this a discrete add-in board for video, or are you going off of processor graphics here? Um, the video display is going to be a couple of things. Now, you have the option in the BIOS to set what the primary video adapter is. If that option's set incorrectly, depending upon the BIOS, you may have an issue where you don't get display on the connector that you're using. And so certain motherboards can force, there to be the graphics card in the primary, in the PCI Express slots, or they can, choose to use the integrated graphics, but you need to, make sure that setting isn't in conflict with what you're actually attempting to connect to. No video off the graphics card or on board. Okay, so I've removed the graphics card from the equation. Um, are you have no way, I'm assuming, of determining whether or not the machine is at all functional. In other words, it could be the processor, right? It could be a dead motherboard. So a couple of things I would probably do. If you have spare equipment, I would obviously attempt to individually test. Pull the processor out, pop it in another board. I would try to narrow it down. Um, you've removed the peripherals, but the motherboard is a complicated piece, and any weird power delivery, weird short, or grounding on the motherboard could be the cause of the problem. That brings up another good point. I've seen motherboards improperly mounted in cases, particularly custom builds, and they short out, and it would cause a no boot scenario too. Also, certain motherboards have diagnostic LEDs to say how far along in the boot process they progressed. That sort of information would be incredibly useful in this type of scenario. Um, uh, okay, so you got power to the fans, but that's just basically saying that the power supply and the delivery through the fan connector is working on the motherboard, but that doesn't guarantee that the power control circuitry for the CPU is functional, or a lot of other things. I don't necessarily think it's isolated to the graphics. In other words, the graphics on integrated graphics these days is not a separate chip on a motherboard. You understand it's in the processor itself. So, obviously there can be an issue with it getting from the processor to the display connector. But I would try to guarantee that the processor is functional. Again, I would pull it out and pop it in another system, another board, just to determine if it'll boot, known working environment. And the shorting out is, again, the most common thing. Just take the motherboard out of the case and put it on a test bench. Um, you know, um, I also recommend those open cases that makes it very easy to kind of just mount a motherboard and connect things to it. It's great for testing environments. I recommend something like that for everyone out there. Um, Let's see. Okay, so getting back to some of the other things that Phoenix said, Mr. Robot live on Facebook. Okay, check that out if you're into Mr. Robot. He asked about how is CP8 doing. I think Brantley's currently doing a little bit of vacation time out at the beach in Ocracoke and all that stuff. He's the primary developer on Crypto Prevent version 8, and I'm sure he'll get back to that. He's probably already still working on it, but he'll probably have hopefully another release out for me to test, and hopefully a public beta of that release um, next, sometime after next week, I would imagine, or hopefully. I don't know his schedule. I can't promise anything, but I imagine that's going to be his priority as soon as he gets back from uh, the small, brief mini vacation that he's got. Um, what else? Okay, yeah, Ian, keep us posted on the status of that. It's we have a lot of theories, and we're all good troubleshooters and diagnosticians, and techs in general. So, you know, uh, I don't want to just assume I'm right. I'd like to know. I like to see follow through, follow up. I like to have closure to situations, and yeah, coinciding it looks like with the announcement of the 1060 graphics card. If anybody does have an Nvidia graphics card out there, which probably a lot of you do, they just rolled out some new drivers, so you can take a look at that. Please welcome my famous and friendly dog here, Lucy. Love you too, Lucy. We will probably have to put her out here in just a moment. She usually comes here to inform me of, oh yes, 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 inform me of how neglectful I've been of her and her needs and her desires. Um, but unlike most drivers, where I generally probably would agree that an end user, consumer, and even a regular business user probably leave it alone unless there's a problem with it. Video drivers are, it's necessary, particularly if you're a gamer, to update them more frequently. And I always recommend having the newest one to not only maximize the performance of your graphics card, but also to um, make sure you support the newest games. Okay, so I just stuck her out. Hopefully you guys can still hear me, and hopefully you didn't hear the squeaky door. Um, let's see, what else? I know I've got some more good stuff to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to go the full hour today, but I'll try to stay with you guys a little bit. Let me see. Moving on. Uh, Any good deals? Do you guys know of any good hot deals? I'm always interested in deals and getting technology for the absolute cheapest. And I just didn't know if you guys had any recommendations on places to uh, check in on those types of things. I've got a couple, but I'm thinking I'm a little bit behind the curve on that. So please share if you guys have any good links on deals. I'm looking to shop for some new memory soon. I want to wait for DDR to get a little bit, DDR4 to get a little bit cheaper before I do a 32 gig upgrade to my system. So it was particularly any coupons or anything deals related to that would be certainly welcome. And this is a great link. I, of course, love Ars Technica Science links. Um, uh, yeah, it might be good of you, Nick, to listen, but at any rate, this is awesome, and this is um, so this link is partially also for Jade and Nick because this affects her life as well as my own. to a certain extent, different ways, but the immune system problems and diseases related to that are seemingly on the rise in this country and largely around the world. The reasoning for that is questionable, but basically we would do well to figure out what's going on here with the autoimmune disorders and attempt to correct it. And so far, it looks like they have a treatment. Let's see. Um, yeah, this could be a precursor to a lot of anti-cancer technologies and stuff like that. But basically, it's a way to get the immune system to repair itself. Let me see here if I can get a little bit more detail. So they're finding ways to tweak T cells. Now, this is particularly relevant to cancer, but I would hope that the same type of tweaking to the immune system could be applied to something like JADE and multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune disorders. It may not be possible. It sort of sounds like this is just helping it kind of identify the cancers a little bit better. But again, if we know how to program for identification, maybe we can program for not identifying. In other words, situations where your body's immune system attacks itself. In the case of me and her, I'm hoping that they will make those advancements, and between stem cells and this type of research, I think it bodes well for people who suffer like we do from those afflictions. So keep us in mind, guys, and if you have any stories related to immune system issues, please know that we're interested in them, and please share it. We don't always have time to keep up. We keep up with tech, and we try to keep up with our health. Health is certainly more important, I would argue, but in our daily lives, it sometimes takes a back seat. And sometimes it's important to not only read those bad stories about all those bad pharmaceuticals killing you, but maybe sometimes about the better tales of true breakthroughs and scientific and medical advancements. Thank you so much, Phoenix, for the link for what looks like a relatively inexpensive NAS storage device, 4 terabyte MyCloud drive for it looks to be 170 bucks. 2 terabyte right down at 109 bucks, but it's an okay deal. Thank you for sharing. Oh, and he says that he has a 3 terabyte, Phoenix does, and it works very well for him, he's saying. That's good to know. Any reason why a person might choose WD's offering versus anybody else's in this regard, Phoenix, or you just passing along something you know is good and works and is priced right? Um, um, Sorry, yeah, just reading up on what Nick was writing there. Um, um, so here's another interesting one. I'm always happy, and I love news about what the Hadron Collider, Large Hadron Collider LHC over there in Switzerland, um, is doing, and apparently it's had a very productive year so far. Um, yeah, just good data. So hopefully this will help, um, with new physics discoveries. Yeah. Okay. Don't have time as usual for their articles, but I'll read that more in detail later. If anyone's interested, obviously I'm on R's articles right now, but I know we've got some Mac users out there. If anybody's interested in beta testing Sierra that's coming out, the Sierra release of macOS. It'll be out later today. You can take a look, it looks like, at that. Oh God, I don't want to get into politics. As I'm sure a lot of you already know, if you're a Verizon customer out there, I think we may have already mentioned this, but that's yeah, they're increasing their prices and raising their data caps. I just want to point out that while they claim to be giving you more data, they still are putting forth the incorrect, implication that you using more data costs them more money, because it does not. You using more data on their network does not cost them any more money. They've already invested in that. It's already there. You using it means nothing. I know there are other aspects of it, and I know they have to upgrade their networks, but the cost of bandwidth has dropped dramatically, to the point so dramatically that it's inconsequential for them, and they only need to upgrade as a result of providing the infrastructure that they would need for future growth. There's not the issue where you have saturation points like they used to. The networks have fleshed out. It's not too much of an issue. And even in relatively crowded areas, there's usually other concerns, like in apartment buildings, or there was a good article on this, actually. Apartment buildings are oftentimes assaulted by broadband providers, encouraging the owners of the rental properties to basically do things so that only one service would be offered to the customers in that area, going so far as to potentially decline allowing other parties access to the property. Yeah, you have your choice, but I'm never going to let an alternative other than the cable provider that I just got in bed with, feel free, but then you'll have to move, that type of thing. And I was really shocked to kind of hear that they do that. I can't find the story right now, but apparently this goes on. And yeah, that's a little bit disturbing. But why did I bring this up? Can't remember. Why did I bring this up? I saw something, and now I forget. Damn it. It's the problem when you talk to yourself. And thanks for agreeing with me, guys. Yeah, it's just basically price increases, and I would just much more. Oh, the Verizon thing. I would just more want them to be open upfront about it. Hey, we're increasing prices, but this whole, the data, your usage of data has a cost to their company, is not right. And in fact, it's almost, I would argue, lying to some extent. I guess it depends on interpretation and spin, which I hate talking about in a election year. If you want to know what the last days of an astronaut's like before they board a Russian rocket, there's a good story for you there. Yeah, it's true. Verizon's logic. But it's the consumers that have allowed this break. I mean, not talking about you and I necessarily, the ones that are aware of the situation, but the consumers that basically continue to buy and continue to pay these price hikes without complaining, without saying anything. It just allows this to continue and allows the other ones to adopt the same practices. So, Sprint and everybody else, are doing the same things. We need to be a little bit more diligent sometimes as consumers. We need to, as Nick is such a big fan of, complain to the FCC. the FTC, the FCC, whatever the appropriate department is, have your voice heard. And it seems like companies only take action when they're pushed, whether it be by lawsuit or extreme public attention, negative attention, that is. Um, yeah, I would urge us to push back. If everybody stopped buying Verizon phones, I guarantee they would change their policies. Yeah, and of course, no choice. The monopolistic practices of these companies don't allow recourse. But I would hope that larger entities like our government might be able to affect the change where an average citizen would not be able to. Yeah, okay, so sure he's in agreement with the ISPs giving condo perks and kickbacks. And this is exactly true. So rental establishment, I mean apartments, condos, anything for rent. There's now a big push by telecom and cable industries to get in bed with those guys and at the customer's expense. So keep that in mind if you're looking to rent. Just because a service is offered in your area doesn't mean it's offered within the rental company's properties. So keep that in mind. Um, yeah, I mean, buying a T1 or a T3. Yeah, I mean, there's not viable alternatives. And when you're talking about, and people will say and scream all up and down, well, you can always get satellite internet or some other broadband offering. Well, it all depends upon your definition of what broadband is. And there are so many services that are completely cut off to individuals that have satellite connections and that still have dial-up connections and other substandard connections. Anything, less than 3 megabits per second, probably anything, less than 5 or maybe even 10 megabits a second are extremely limiting. And it gets less as you get up in higher speeds, but there are literally activities where for a satellite connection, if you were a gamer, you can't game. Dial-up connection, yeah, you can't go to some sites. Some sites it would literally take so long for you to load, it's it's not going to happen in your attention span's time. So they compare it like apples and apples. They say it's broadband, it's broadband, it's broadband, it's broadband, but it's not. A race car, a NASCAR is not in a car that goes around the track on NASCAR is not in competition with your Prius or your Tempo or your whatever crap car you're driving down the road. Two different classes of vehicles, okay? And nobody would ever compare them against each other, except broadband providers compare their solutions against each other all the time, despite there being huge discrepancies. Huge. Um, yeah, thank you, Shri, for again confirming that horrible kickback situation. This is the first time I had heard of this, and I'm so sad to hear that it's common practice. Um, the more you pay, the better money you get. Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going with that, Phoenix, but I mean, yeah, you get more if you pay more, like anywhere else. But you're getting less and less per every dollar you're spending these days. It would seem, as the prices continually get lower and lower and lower for the providers, they do nothing but pass on higher and higher costs to us. And again, that's their privilege to do so. However, because of the lack of competition, there's no controls in the market to prevent them from just taking that to an extreme. Oh yeah, you want internet access, you can't get it any other way but us. But what's an unreasonable charge for that? $10,000 a month? I mean, I don't know. But they complain about the pharmaceutical companies raising their prices on drugs, and I know it's horrible. But in some of the cases, I would argue that some of these price hikes are no different. Um, so let's see, what else? pretty sad when the Olympians going to Rio are having to look at antimicrobial clothing to help protect themselves from swimming in the bacteria-infested water that apparently is down there. Um, I might have to call it quits, guys. I'm running out of stuff to talk about. Scrooge McDucky and Vault in their backyard. Yeah, Eric. We all do. Um, hmm. Well, all right, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna call it. Thanks so much for joining me, and my apologies for not having a larger crew today. You can catch us, hopefully, maybe. Don't count on it because of today, but possibly tomorrow at 6 o'clock. If not, hopefully we'll be all back to normal next week, 8 a.m. on Monday. Join us at foolishtechshow.com or foolishit.com/live. Get in on our IRC chat. Bye, internets, and again, thanks for everything, and I hope it was informative or just entertaining in some way. Peace be with all of you. I'm out. Twitch should be stopping, and YouTube.